it's well loved. The last Olympian. Yeah, so that's the first series. And then this is just a notebook that I will be writing everything that's like important, and then at the end of each video I'll just be doing a quick little overview of what happened and what was important. And then we have this series. The Years of Olympus is the second series. We have The Lost Hero, The Son of Neptune, The Mark of Athena, The House of Hades, and The Blood of Olympus. So I've read the entire first series and most of the second. I haven't read The Blood of Olympus yet, just because I just didn't like that book. To be fair, I only read the first page, but you know, we'll see. And then we have the third series. We have The Hidden Oracle, The Dark Prophecy, The Burning Maze, The Tyrant's Tomb, and The Tower of Nero. So this is the third series. And it's definitely going to be a little bit until we get to this book series, but I've read the first book, none of the other ones, because when I was starting the Dark Prophecy, I thought that I wanted to start a YouTube channel and to hopefully experience some of it live. And so I'm hoping that it's gonna be good. And then, okay. We have The Sun and the Star. I won't, give it away of who it's about if you don't already know. For some people who don't want any sort of spoilers. And this one is written by Mark Oshiro as well as Riordan. But yeah, can't wait to read that one. And then, also, I believe that one is a standalone, so where you technically could read it alone, and it's the only one in the series. But I definitely think that you should read the other ones. And then there's another one coming out. I just found out about it. I can't remember what it's called. So I guess we already have another book. And then we have this series, which is still a part of the original series. But this one came out in 2023. And it's called The Chalice of the Gods. And it is, I've read about half of it before I realized that I needed, you don't technically need to read the other series, but I thought that I think, I could be wrong, I think it referenced something that happens in one of these books. So I stopped and put it down to start that series. And then there's the second book, The Wrath of the Triple Goddesses. It has a red color paged. And there's the last book in the series, which is coming out in September. which happens in between, or happens in the first series, and then the other one's in the second series. So I'm gonna get those books to read when they are supposed to be, because I'm gonna read it in timeline order and not necessarily like published timeline, because they really are basically the same. Like there's nothing too out of order, just those two books. And then at the end, of this long series, I'll do a quick little read of Your Real Guide to Tim Training Camp, Camp Half-Blood Confidential, which just a little, just a book about the different things in Camp Half-Blood and a background information. So I haven't looked at this yet, but I can't wait. And then there's a cookbook, because whenever I watch shows, I like to make treats that pertain to the show or series. So I got this for Christmas. I've already tapped in of just like what I want to make for the show, and just for my just for me. So whenever I watch season 2 and whenever I make the treats, I'll definitely take a picture of everything that I make. Okay. Okay, I've now told you all the books that I have, and we will begin with The Lightning Thief. It has been a while since I've read this series. I'm gonna be honest, the last time I probably read it was in the 7th grade. So it's been 6 years, which is insane, but yeah. Again, all rights go to Riordan. It is dedicated to Haley, who heard the story first. There are 22 chapters, and I will be reading probably 2 chapters a video, so about 11 videos, and I haven't decided if I will post weekly or 2 times a week. So 11 chapters, or like 11 videos. There's 4, 8, 12, so potentially 1.5 months or 3 months. We'll see. Chapter 1. I accidentally vaporized my pre-algebra teacher. Look, I didn't want to be a half-blood. If you're reading this because you think you might be one, my advice is close this book right now. Believe whatever lie your mom or dad told you about your birth and try to lead a normal life. Being a half-blood, it's dangerous, it's scary. Most of the time, it gets you killed in painful, nasty ways. If you're a normal kid reading this book, you think it's fiction, great, move on. I envy you for being able to believe that none of this ever happened. But if you recognize yourself in these pages, if you feel something stirring inside, stop reading immediately. You might be one of us, and once you know that, it's only a matter of time before they sense it too, and they'll come for you. Don't say I didn't warn you. My name is Percy Jackson. I'm 12 years old. Until months ago, I was a boarding student at Yancey Academy, a private school for troubled kids in upstate New York. Am I a trouble kid? Yeah, you could say that. I could start at any point in my short, miserable life to prove it. But things really started going bad last May when our 6th grade class took a field trip to Manhattan. 28 mental case kids and 2 teachers on a yellow school bus heading to Metropolitan Museum of Art to look at ancient Greek and Roman stuff. I know it sounds like torture. Most ANSI field trips were, but Mr. Brunner our Latin teacher, was leading this trip, so I had hopes. Mr. Brunner was this middle-aged guy in a motorized wheelchair. He had thinning hair and a scrubby beard, and a frayed tweed jacket, which always smelled like coffee. You wouldn't think he'd be cool, but he told stories and jokes and let us play games in class. He also had this awesome collection of Roman armor and weapons, so he was the only teacher whose class didn't put me to sleep. I hoped the trip would be okay. At least I hoped that for once I wouldn't get in trouble. Boy, was I wrong. See, bad things happen to me on field trips. Like at my 5th grade school, when we went to the Saratoga battlefield, I had this accident with a Revolutionary War cannon. I wasn't aiming for the school bus, but of course I got expelled anyways. And before that, at my 4th grade school, we took a behind-the-scenes tour of the Marine World Shirt Bowl. I sort of hit the wrong lever on the catwalk, and our class took an unplanned swim. And the time before that, well, you get the idea. This trip, I was determined to be good. All the way to the city, I put up with a Nancy Boba Fett, the freckly red-headed kleptomaniac girl, hitting my best friend Grover in the back of the head with chunks of peanut butter and ketchup sandwich. Grover was an easy target. He was scrawny. He cried when he got frustrated. He must have been held back several grades because he was the only 6th grader with acne and the start of a wispy beard on his chin. On top of all that, he was crippled. He had a note excusing him from PE for the rest of his life because he had some kind of muscular disease in his legs. He walked funny, like every step hurt him, but don't let that fool you. You should have seen him run when it was enchilada day in the cafeteria. Anyway, Nancy Boba Fett was throwing wads of sandwich that stuck in his curly brown hair, and she knew I couldn't do anything back to her because I was already on probation. The headmaster had threatened me with a deadly bite and school suspension if anything bad, embarrassing, or even mildly entertaining happened on this trip. I'm gonna kill her, I mumbled. Grover tried to talk me down. It's okay. I like peanut butter. He dodged another piece of Nancy's lunch. That said, I started to get up, but Grover pulled me back to my seat. You're already on probation, he reminded me. You know we'll get blamed if anything happens. Looking back on it, I wish I decked Nancy Boba Fett right then and there. In-school suspension would have been nothing compared to the mess I was about to get myself into. Mr. Brunner left the museum door. He rode up in front with his wheelchair, guiding us through the big echoey galleries past marble statues and glass cases full of really old black and orange pottery. It blew my mind that this stuff had survived for 2,000, 3,000 years. He gathered us around a 13-foot tall stone column with a big Sphinx on top and started telling us how it was a grave marker, a stele, for a girl about our age. He told us about the carvings on the side. I was trying to listen to what he had to say because it's kind of interesting, but everybody around me was talking, and every time I told them to shut up, the other teacher chaperone, Mrs. Dodds, would give me the evil eye. Mrs. Dodds was a little math teacher from Georgia who always wore a black leather jacket, even though she was 50 years old. She looked at me enough to ride a Harley right into your locker. She had come to Yancey halfway through the year when our last math teacher had a nervous breakdown. From her first day, Mrs. Dodds loved Nancy Bubblepit and figured I was devil spawn. She'd point her crooked finger at me and say, "Now, honey, real sweet," and I knew I was going to get after-school detention for a month. One time, after she made me raise answers out of old math workbooks until midnight, I told Grover I didn't think Mrs. Dodds was human. He looked at me real serious and said, "You're absolutely right." Mr. Brunner kept talking about Greek funeral art. Finally, Nancy Bubblepit snickered something about the naked guy on the stele, and I turned around and said, "Will you shut up?" It came out louder than I meant to. The whole group laughed. Mr. Brunner stopped his story. "Mr. Jackson," he said, "did you have a comment?" My face went totally red. I said, "No, sir." Mr. Brunner pointed to one of the pictures on the stele. "Perhaps you tell us what this picture represents." I looked at the carving and felt a flush of relief because I actually recognized it. "That's Kronos eating his kids, right?" "Right," Mr. Brunner said, obviously not satisfied. "And he did this because, well," I racked my brain to remember. "Kronos was the king god and god," Mr. Brunner asked. "Titan," I corrected myself. "And he didn't trust his kids who were gods. So, Kronos ate them, right?" But his wife hid baby Zeus and gave Kronos a rock to eat instead. And later, when Zeus grew up, he tricked his dad, Kronos, into carving up his brothers and sisters. "Ew," said one of the girls behind him. And so there was this big fight between the gods and the Titans. I continued, and the gods won. Some snickers from the group. Behind me, Nancy Bubblepit mumbled to a friend, like we're gonna use this in real life, like it's gonna be on our job application. "Please explain why Kronos ate his kids." "And why," Mr. Jackson Brunner said, to paraphrase Miss Bubblepit's excellent question, "does this matter in real life?" "Busted," Grover muttered. "Shut up," Nancy hissed, her face even brighter red than her hair. At least Nancy got back too. Mr. Brunner was the only one who ever caught her saying something wrong. He had radar ears. I thought about his question and shrugged. "I don't know, sir." "I see." Mr. Brunner looked disappointed. "Well, half credit, Mr. Jackson. Zeus did indeed feed Kronos a mixture of mustard and wine to make him disgorge his other 5 children, who of course, being immortal gods, had been living and growing up completely undigested in the Titan's stomach. The gods defeated their father, sliced him to pieces with his own scythe, and scattered his remains in Tartarus, the darkest part of the underworld. On that happy note, it's time for lunch. Mrs. Dodds, would you lead us back outside?" The class drifted off, the girls holding their stomachs, the guys pushing each other around and acting like doofuses. Grover and I were about to follow when Mr. Brunner said, "Mr. Jackson." I knew something. I knew that was coming. I told Grover to keep going. Then I turned towards Mr. Brunner. "Sir," Mr. Brunner had this look that wouldn't let you go. Intense brown eyes that could have been 1,000 years old and had seen everything. "You must learn the answer to my question," Mr. Brunner told me, "about the Titans, about life, and how your studies apply to it." "Oh, what you learned from me," he said, "is vitally important. I expect you to treat it as such. I will accept only the best from you, Percy Jackson." I wanted to get angry. This guy pushed me so hard. And I mean, sure, it was kind of cool on tournament days when he dressed up in his Roman armor and shouted, "What ho!" and challenged us. Sword pointed against chalk to run to the board and name every Greek and Roman person who had ever lived, and their mother and what god they worshipped. But Mr. Brunner expected me to be as good as everybody else, despite the fact that I have dyslexia and attention deficit disorder, and I had never made above a C- in my life. No, he didn't expect me to be as good. He expected me to be better, and I just couldn't learn all those facts and names, much less spell them correctly. I mumbled something about trying harder, while Mr. Brunner took one long, sad look at the stele, like he'd been to this girl's funeral. He told me to go outside and eat my lunch. The class gathered on the front steps of the museum, where we could watch the foot traffic along Fifth Avenue. Overhead, a huge storm was brewing, with clouds blacker than I'd seen over the city. I figured maybe it was global warming or something, because the weather all across New York State had been weird since Christmas. We'd have massive snowstorms, flooding, wildfires from lightning strikes. I wouldn't have been surprised if this was a hurricane blowing in. Nobody else seemed to notice. Some of the guys were pelting pigeons with Lunchable crackers. Nancy Bullifant was trying to pickpocket something from a lady's purse, and of course Mrs. Dodds wasn't saying a thing. Grover and I sat on the edge of the fountain, away from the others. We thought that maybe if we did that, everybody wouldn't know we're from that school, the school for loser freaks who couldn't make it elsewhere. "Detention?" Grover asked. "Nah," I said, "not from Brunner. I just wish you'd lay off me sometimes. I mean, I'm not a genius." Grover didn't say anything for a while. Then, when I thought he was going to give me some deep philosophical comment, he made me feel better. He said, "Can I have your apple?" I didn't have much of an appetite, so I'd let him take it. I watched the stream of cabs going down Fifth Avenue and thought about my mom's apartment, only a little ways uptown from where we sat. I hadn't seen her since Christmas. I wanted so bad to jump in a taxi and head home. She hugged me and be glad to see me, but she'd be disappointed too. She sent me right back to Yancey, remind me that I had to try harder, even if this was my 6th school in 6 years, and I was probably going to be kicked out again. I wouldn't be able to stand that sad look she gave me. Mr. Brunner parked his wheelchair at the base of the handicap ramp. He ate celery while he read a paperback novel. A red umbrella stuck up from the back of his chair, making it look like a motorized cafe table. I was about to unwrap my sandwich when Nancy Bullifant appeared in front of me with her ugly friends. I guess she got tired of stealing from tourists Grover's lap. Oops, she said. Oops, she grinned at me with her crooked teeth. Her freckles were orange, as if somebody spray painted her face with liquid Cheetos. I tried to stay cool. The school counselor had told me a million times, count it in, get control of your temper. But I was so mad, my mind went blank. A wave roared in my ears. I don't remember touching her, but the next thing I knew, Nancy was sitting on her butt in the fountain, screaming. Percy pushed me. Mrs. Dodson materialized next to us. Some of the kids were whispering, "Did you see that? The water, like it grabbed her." I didn't know what they were talking about. All I knew was that I was in trouble again. As soon as Mrs. Dodds was sure that poor little Nancy was okay, promising to get her a new shirt from the museum gift shop, etc., etc., Mrs. Dodds turned to me. There was a triumphant fire in her eyes, as if I'd done something she'd been waiting for all semester. "Now, honey," I know I grumbled, "a month erasing workbooks." That wasn't the right thing to say. "Come with me," Mrs. Dodds said. "Wait," Grover yelped. "It was me. I pushed her." I stared at him, stunned. I couldn't believe he was trying to cover for me. Mrs. Dodds scared Grover to death. She glared at him so hard, his whiskery chin trembled. "I don't think so, Mr. Underwood," she said, "but you will stay here." Grover looked at me desperately. "It's okay, man," I told him. "Thanks for trying." "Honey," Mrs. Dodds barked at me. "Now." Nancy Bobovit smirked. I gave her my deluxe "I'll kill you later" stare. Then I turned to face Mrs. Dodds, but she wasn't there. She was standing at the museum entrance, way at the top of the steps, gesturing impatiently at me to come on. How'd she get there so fast? I have moments like that a lot, when my brain falls asleep or something, and the next thing I know, I've missed something, as if a puzzle piece fell out of the universe and left me staring at the blank place behind it. The school counselor told me that this was part of the ADHD, my brain misinterpreting things. I wasn't so sure. I went after Mrs. Dodds. Halfway up the steps, I glanced back at Grover. He was looking pale, cutting his eyes between me and Mr. Brunner, like he wanted Mr. Brunner to notice what was going on, but Mr. Brunner was absorbed in his novel. I looked back up. Mrs. Dodds had disappeared again, but she was now inside the building at the end of the entrance hall. Okay, I thought, she's going to make me buy a new shirt for Nancy at the gift shop. But apparently that wasn't the plan. I followed her deeper into the museum. When I finally caught up to her, we were back in the Greek and Roman section, except the gallery was empty. Mrs. Dodd stood with her arms crossed in front of a big marble phrase of the Greek gods. She was making this weird noise in her throat, like growling. Even without the noise, I would have been nervous. It's weird being alone with a teacher, especially Mrs. Dodds. Something about the way she looked at the phrase, as if she wanted to pulverize it. "You've been giving us problems, honey," she said. I did the safe thing. I said, "Yes, ma'am." She tugged on the cuffs of her leather jacket. "Did you really think you'd get away with it?" The look in her eyes were beyond mad. It was evil. "She's a teacher," I thought nervously. "It's not like she's gonna hurt me." "I'll try harder, ma'am," I said. Thunder shook the building. "We're not fools," Percy Jackson. Mrs. Dodd said. It was only a matter of time before we found you out. Confess, and you will suffer less pain. I didn't know what she was talking about. All I could think of was that the teachers must have found out the illegal stash of candy I'd been selling out of my dorm room. Or maybe they'd realize I got my essay on Tom Sawyer from the internet without ever reading the book, and now they were going to take away my grade. Or worse, they were going to make me read the book. Well, she demanded. Ma'am, I don't. Your time is up, she hissed. Then the weirdest thing happened. Her eyes began to glow like barbecue coals. Her fingers stretched, turning into talons. Her jacket melted into large, leathery wings. She wasn't human. She was a shriveled hag with bat wings and claws and a mouth full of yellow fangs. And she was about to slice me to ribbons. Then things got even stranger. Mr. Brunner, who had been in the front of the museum a minute before, wheeled his chair in the doorway of the gallery, holding a pen in his hands. What ho, Percy, he shouted, and tossed the pen through the air. Mrs. Dodds lunged at me. With a yelp, I dodged and felt talons slash the air next to my ear. I snatched the ballpoint pen out of the air, but when it hit my hand, it wasn't a pen anymore. It was a sword, Mr. Brunner's bronze sword, which he always used on tournament day. Mrs. Dodd spun towards me with a murderous look in her eyes. My knees were jelly. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the sword. She snarled, "Die, honey." She flew straight at me. Absolute terror ran through my body. I did the only thing that came naturally. I swung the sword. The metal blade hit her shoulder and passed clean through her body, as if she were made of water. Mrs. Dodds was a sand castle in a power van. She exploded into yellow powder, vaporized on the spot, leaving nothing but the smell of sulfur and a dying screech, and a chill of evil in the air, as if those two glowing red eyes were still watching me. I was alone. There was a ballpoint pen in my hand. Mr. Brenner wasn't there. Nobody was there but me. My hands were still trembling. My lunch must have been contaminated with magic mushrooms or something. And I imagined the whole thing. I went back outside. It started to rain. Grover was sitting by the fountain, a museum map tinted over his head. Nancy Buffett was still standing there, soaked from her swim in the fountain, grumbling to her ugly friends. When she saw me, she said, "I hope Mrs. Kerr whipped your butt." I said, "Who?" "Our teacher, duh." I blinked. We had no teacher named Mrs. Kerr. I asked Nancy what she was talking about. She just rolled her eyes and turned away. I asked Grover where Mrs. Dodds was. He said, "Who?" But he first paused, and he wouldn't look at me, so I thought he was messing with me. "Not funny, man," I told him. "This is serious." Thunder boomed overhead. I saw Mr. Brunner sitting under his red umbrella, reading his book, as if he'd never moved. I went over to him. He looked up, a little distracted. "Ah, that would be my pen. Please bring your own writing utensil in the future, Mr. Jackson." I handed Mr. Brunner's pen. I hadn't even realized I was still holding it. "Sir," I said, "where's Mrs. Dodds?" He stared at me blankly. "Who?" "The other chaperone, Mrs. Dodds, the pre-algebra teacher." He frowned and sat forward, looking mildly concerned. "Percy, there is no Mrs. Dodds on this field trip. As far as I know, there's never been a Mrs. Dodds at Yancey Academy. Are you feeling all right?" That was was chapter 1 of The Lightning Thief. Okay, now on to chapter 2. 3 old ladies knit the socks of death. I was used to the occasional weird experience, but usually they were over quickly. This 24/7 hallucination was more than I could handle. For the rest of the school year, the entire campus seemed to be playing some kind of trick on me. The students acted as if they were completely and totally convinced that Mrs. Carr, a perky blonde woman who I'd never seen in my life until she got on our bus at the end of the field trip, had been our pre-algebra teacher since Christmas. Every so often, I would spring a Mrs. Dodd's reference on somebody just to see if I could trip them up, but they would stare at me like I was psycho. I got so I almost believed them. Mrs. Dodds had never existed. Almost, but Grover couldn't fool me. When I mentioned the name Dodds to him, he would hesitate, then claim she didn't exist. But I knew he was lying. Something was going on. Something had to happen at the museum. I didn't have much time to think about it during the days, but at night, visioning Mrs. Dodds with talons and leathery wings would wake me up in a cold sweat. The freak weather continued, which didn't help my mood. One night, a thunderstorm blew out the windows in my dorm room. A few days later, the biggest tornado spotted in the Hudson Valley touched down, only 50 miles from Yancey Academy. One of the current events we studied in social studies was the unusual number of small planes that had gone down in sudden squalls in the Atlantic that year. I started feeling cranky and irritable most of the time. My grades slipped from D's to F's. I got into more fights with Nancy Popovit and her friends. I was sent out into the hallway in almost every class. Finally, when our English teacher, Mr. Nicole, asked me for the millionth time why I was too lazy to study for spelling tests, I snapped. I called him an old sot. I wasn't sure what that meant, but it sounded good. The headmaster sent my mom a letter the following week, making it official. I would not be invited back next year to Yancey Academy. Fine, I told myself, just fine. I was homesick. I wanted to be with my mom in her little apartment on the Upper East Side, even if I had to go to the public school and put up with my obnoxious stepfather and his stupid poker parties. And yet, there were things I'd miss at Yancey. The view of the woods out of my dorm window, the Hudson River in the distance, the smell of pine trees. I'd miss Grover, who'd been a good friend, even if he was a little strange. I worried how he'd survive next year without me. I'd miss Latin class too, Mr. Brenner's crazy tournaments, and his faith that I could do well. As exam week got closer, Latin was the only test I studied for. I hadn't forgotten what Mr. Brenner told me about this subject being life and death for me. I wasn't sure why, but I started to believe him. The evening before my final, I got so frustrated, I threw the Cambridge Guide to Greek Mythology across my dorm room. Words started swimming off the page, circling my head. The letters were doing 180s, as if they were riding skateboards. There was no way I was going to remember the difference between Chiron and Charon, or Polydictes, or Polyduces, and conjugating those Latin verbs. Forget it. I paced the room, feeling like ants were crawling around inside my shirt. I remembered Mr. Brenner's serious expression, his 1,000-year-old eyes. I will accept only the best from you, Percy Jackson. I took a Maybe if I talked to Mr. Brunner, he could give me some pointers. At least I could apologize for the big bad F I was about to score on his exam. I didn't want to leave Yancey Academy with him thinking I hadn't tried. I walked downstairs to the faculty offices. Most of them were dark and empty, but Mr. Brunner's door was ajar. Light from his window stretching across the hallway floor. I was 3 steps from the door handle when I heard voices inside the office. Mr. Brunner asked a question. A voice up was definitely Grover said. Worried about Percy, sir? I froze. I'm not usually an eavesdropper, but I dare you to try not listening if you hear your best friend talking about you to an adult. I inched closer. Alone this summer, Grover said. I mean, a kindly one was in school. Now we know for sure they know too. We would only make matters worse by rushing him, Mr. Brunner said. We need the boy to mature more. But he may not have time. The summer still says a deadline. Will have to be resolved without him. Grover, let him enjoy his ignorance while he still can. Sir, he saw her. His imagination, Mr. Brunner insisted. The mist over the students and staff will be enough to convince him of that. Sir, I can't fail my duties again. Grover's voice was choked with emotion. You know what that would mean. You haven't failed, Grover, Mr. Brunner said kindly. I should have seen her for what she was. Now let's just worry about keeping Percy alive until next fall. The mythology book dropped out of my hands and hit the floor with a thud. Mr. Brunner was silent. My heart hammering, I picked up the book and backed down the hall. A shadow slid across the lighted glass of Brunner's office door, the shadow of something much taller than my wheelchair-bound teacher, holding something that looked suspiciously like an archer's bow. I opened the nearest door and slipped inside. A few seconds later, I heard a slow clop, 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 like muffled wood blocks, then a sound like an animal snuffling right outside the door. A large, dark shape paused in front of the glass and then moved on. A bead of sweat trickled down my neck. Somewhere in the hallway, Mr. Brunner spoke. Nothing, he murmured. My nerves haven't been right since the winter solstice. Mine neither, Grover said. But I could have sworn. Go back to the dorm, Mr. Brunner told him. You've got a long day of exams tomorrow. Don't remind me. The lights went out in Mr. Brunner's office. I waited in the dark for what seemed like forever. Finally, I slipped out of the hallway and made my way back up to the door. Grover was laying on his bed, studying his Latin exam notes like he'd been there all night. Hey, he said, bleary-eyed. You're gonna be ready for the test tomorrow. I didn't answer. You look awful, he frowned. Is everything okay? Just tired. I turned so he couldn't read my expression and started getting ready for bed. I didn't understand what I'd heard downstairs. I wanted to believe I'd imagined the whole thing, but one thing was clear. Grover and Brunner was talking about me behind my back. They thought I was in some kind of danger. The next afternoon, after I was leaving the 3-hour Latin exam, my eyes swimming with all the Greek and Roman names I'd misspelled. Mr. Brunner called me back inside. For a moment, I was worried he'd found out about my eavesdropping the night before, but that didn't seem to be the problem. Percy, he said, don't be discouraged about leaving Yancey. It's for the best. His tone was kind, but his words still embarrassed me. Even though he was speaking quietly, the other kids finishing the desk could hear. Nancy Bubbapit smirked at me and made sarcastic little kissing motions with her lips. I mumbled, "Okay, sir." I mean, Mr. Brenner wheeled his chair back and forth like he wasn't sure what to say. "This isn't the right place for you. It was only a matter of time." My eyes stunk. Here was my favorite teacher in front of the class telling me I couldn't handle it. After saying he believed in me all year, now he was telling me I was destined to get kicked out. "Right," I said, trembling. "No, no," Mr. Brenner said. "Oh, confound it all. What I'm trying to say is, you're not normal, Percy. That's nothing to be." "Thanks," I blurted. "Thanks a lot for reminding me, Percy," but I was already gone. On the last day of the term, I shoved my clothes into my suitcase. The other guys were joking around, talking about their vacation plans. One of them was going on a hiking trip to Switzerland. Another was cruising the Caribbean for a month. They were juvenile delinquents like me, but they were rich juvenile delinquents. Their daddies were executives or ambassadors or celebrities. I was a nobody from a family of nobodies. They'd asked me what I'd be doing this year, and I told them that I'd be going back to the city. What I didn't tell them was that I'd have to get summer jobs, walking dogs or selling magazine subscriptions, and spend my free time worrying about where I'd go to school in the fall. "Oh," one of the guys said, "that's cool." They went back to their conversation as if I never existed. The only person I dreaded saying goodbye to was Grover, but as it turns out, I didn't have to. He booked a ticket to Manhattan on the same Greyhound as I had. So there we were, together again, heading into the city. During the whole bus ride, Grover kept glancing at me nervously down the aisle, watching the other passengers. It occurred to me that he'd always acted nervous and fidgety when we left Yancey, as if he expected something bad to happen. Before, I always assumed he was worried about getting teased, but there was nobody to tease him on the Greyhound. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. I said, "Looking for the kindly ones." Grover nearly jumped out of his seat. What do you mean?" I confessed about eavesdropping on him and Mr. Brenner the night before the exam. Grover's eye twitched. "How much did you hear?" "Oh, not much. What's the summer solstice deadline?" He winced. "Look, Percy, I was just worried for you. You see, I mean, hallucinating about demon math teachers." Grover, and I was telling Mr. Brenner that maybe you're overstressed about something because there's no such person as Mrs. Johns, and Grover, you're a really, really bad liar. His ears turned pink. From his shirt pocket, he fished out a grubby business card. "Just take this, okay, in case you need me this summer." The card was in fancy script, which was a murder on my dyslexic eyes, but I finally made something out like Grover Underwood, keeper, Half-Blood Hill, Long Island, New York, 800-009-0009. "What's half? Don't say it out loud," he yelped. "That's my, summer address." My heart sank. Grover had a summer home. I'd never considered that his family might be rich as the other Yancey's Academy students. "Okay," I said glumly. "So, like, if I want to come visit your mansion," he nodded, or if you need me." "Why would I need you?" It came out harsher than I meant it to. Grover blushed out his Adam's apple. "Look, Percy, I, I, I kind of have to protect you. I stared at him. All year long, I'd gotten in fights, keeping bullies away from him. I'd lost sleep worrying that he'd get beaten up next year without me. And here he was, acting like he was the one defending me. Grover, I said, what exactly are you protecting me from? There was a huge grinding noise under our feet. Black smoke poured from the dashboard, and the whole bus filled with a smell like rotten eggs. The driver cursed and limped the Greyhound over to the side of the highway. After a few minutes of clanking around in the engine compartment, the driver announced that we'd all have to get off. Grover and I piled outside with everybody else. We were on a stretch of country road, no place you'd notice if you didn't break down there. On our side of the highway was nothing like maple trees and litter from passing cars. On the other side, across 4 lanes of asphalt, shimmering with afternoon heat, was an old-fashioned fruit stand. The stuff on sale looked really good. Heaping boxes of blood-red cherries and apples, walnuts and apricots, jugs of cider in a clawfoot tub full of ice. There were no customers, just 3 old ladies sitting in rocking chairs in the shade of a maple tree, knitting the biggest pair of socks I'd ever seen. I mean, these socks were the size of sweaters, but they were clearly socks. The lady on the right knitted one of them. The lady on the left knitted the other. The lady in the middle had an enormous basket of electric blue yarn. All 3 women looked ancient with pale faces, wrinkled like fruit leather, silver hair tied back in white bandanas, bony arms sticking out of bleached cotton dresses. The weirdest thing was they seemed to be looking right at me. I looked over at Grover to say something about this, and I saw the blood had drained from his face. His nose was twitching. Grover, I said, hey man, tell me they're not looking at you. They are, aren't they? Yeah, weird, huh? You think those socks would fit me? Not funny, Percy. Not funny at all. The old lady in the middle took out a huge pair of scissors, gold and silver, long-bladed like shears. I heard Grover catch his breath. We're getting on the bus, he told me. Come on. What? It's 1,000 degrees in there. Come on. He pried open the door and climbed inside, but I stayed back. Across the road, the old ladies were still watching me. The middle one cut the yarn, and I swear I could hear the snip across 4 lanes of traffic. Her 2 friends balled up the electric blue socks, leaving me wondering who they could possibly be for, Sasquatch or Godzilla. At the rear end of the bus, the driver wrenched a big chunk of smoking metal out of the engine compartment. The bus shuddered and the engine roared back into life. The passengers cheered. Darn right, yelled the driver. He slapped the bus with his hat. Everybody back on board. Once we got going, I started feeling feverish, as if I got the flu. Grover didn't look much better. He was shivering and his teeth were chattering. Grover, yeah, what are you not telling me? He tapped his forehead with his shirt sleeve. Percy, what did you see back at the fruit stand? You mean with old ladies? What is it about them, man? They're not like Mrs. Dodds, are they? His expression was hard to read, but I got the feeling that the fruit stand ladies were something much, much worse than Mrs. Dodds. He said, just tell me what you saw. The middle one took out her scissors. and she got the yarn. He closed his eyes and made a gesture with his fingers that might have been crossing himself, but it wasn't. It was something else, something almost older. He said, "You saw her snip the cord." "Yeah, so." But even as I said it, I knew it was a big deal. "This is not happening," Grover mumbled. He started chewing at his thumb. "I don't want to be like the last time." "What last time?" "Always sixth grade. They never get past 6. "Grover," I said, because he was really starting to scare me. "What are you talking about? Let me walk you home from the bus station. Promise me." That this seemed like a strange request to me, but I promised he could. "Is this like a stupid superstition or something?" I asked. No answer. "Grover, the snipping of the yarn, does it mean that somebody's going to die?" He looked at me mournfully, like he was already picking the kind of flowers I like best on my coffin. So that was chapter 2 of Percy Jackson. And before I end the video, I'm going to read from my notebook what I think is important, or just kind of the synopsis. Okay, so Percy's 12 years old in New York. He mentions that weird crazy stuff has happened before, like weapons being set off, water-related incidents, and Nancy Olivet is a bully and basically a psychopath that eats peanut butter and ketchup sandwich. That's disgusting. So right off the bat, Percy hates Mrs. Dodds. He says, "I didn't think Mrs. Dodds was human." Then Grover, I have no idea what I wrote, but basically that was definitely like foreshadowing, because Mrs. Dodds obviously wasn't human. They then discussed the story of Kronos and the downfall of Zeus. Brenner then got serious and asked why it's important to real life, because for Percy it's going to be vitally important. That's, also foreshadowing that definitely will come in play. And then Percy has dyslexia and ADHD. And then Nancy started bullying again, and Percy got angry and blacked out, basically. And Nancy says Percy pushed her, so Dodds tells Percy to go with her. And all the kids that watched says that the water grabbed her. And this is now the second time they mentioned Percy and water. So I feel like, that's going to be important, because how does he just control water? And then, so Dodds and Percy are in the Greek and Roman section. So obviously Greek, that's a mention for a reason. They mentioned it a couple times. And then, if you don't understand why, well, I won't spoil it for you, I guess, but I feel like you should know for just picking up this book. But thunder is shaking the buildings. Dodds is telling him to confess, and then she turns into a monster with wings and claws. Brenner comes in, gives Percy a pen that turns into a sword, then stabs Dodds, who turned to dust. And if you stab any normal person, which you shouldn't, obviously, but they don't just turn to dust. sword wasn't there anymore, and the sword was, just a pen. And then he goes out and asks Dots, and asks about Dots to everyone, and they said that they've never had a teacher named that. And I do remember at 9 years old reading this book, I'm like, why are they all gaslighting Percy? Because I was like, is this just like some elaborate prank? I was like, how did they all get on board? But they were not pranking Percy. They just genuinely didn't remember, I guess. So yeah, I feel like the thunder shaking was definitely important. Rereading these books, I'm realizing stuff that I never picked up on, because when I was reading this at 9, like, I was not guessing all of this. Like, I wasn't picking out the Greek and Roman and the thunder and the water in Percy. Okay, so on to chapter 2. Percy's basically going insane, and he was, oh, sorry. So Percy's basically going insane, and crazy storms are happening, specifically thunderstorms. So another mention of thunder, and Percy is fighting more people, and he gets told that he can't come back. And then they mention Chiron and Charon. So another mention of, Greek stories. And honestly, sorry, a little tangent, I might do episodes about the Greek mythology, because I love Greek mythology, and I just want to tell some of the stories, and yeah, sorry. And then Percy overhears Brunner and Grover talking in Brunner's office about Percy, and it's not great. They mentioned the kindly ones, and Brunner says they have to keep tricking him. Grover talks about the past failed mission, and so Brunner obviously remembers Dots, because he's telling Grover that they have to keep going with that plan, which is definitely interesting to why Percy can't know about it. And then Percy also says Brunner looked taller and he had bows and arrows, so keep that in your back pocket. Percy now knows something is up, and probably feels validated, because like he is going crazy, and like everyone is blind to him or making him feel like he's insane. And so this was like the proof in the pudding that he that Miss Johns was there, and that he's not going crazy. And then Grover doesn't realize Brunner tells Percy that leaving is the best thing for him. He doesn't belong, which is probably a punch to the stomach when you are a teenager and your favorite teacher is literally saying that you should leave and that it wasn't a good fit for you, which like sucks, because I've had a teacher who was my favorite teacher, and then they really just like turned around and was a completely different person after a while. So I get that is like awful. As Percy and Grover are leaving Yancey, Percy mentioned the kindly ones because Grover's acting really weird, and Grover tries to backtrack, but Percy is not buying it. He's like, I know what's happening. I know you're lying to me. And then Grover gives Percy an address and and tells Percy that this is his Cooper gives Percy an address and tells Percy he is his protector for what, who knows? Like, Percy's like, what? Because, like, I've had to protect you this entire time. Like, what do you mean you've been protecting me? Like, that's not how it's going. And then, so they have to get off the bus, and there's 3 old ladies knitting, and the strings are electric blue socks. And keep that in mind. Grover asked if he saw them getting this string, and then he says they never make it past 6th grade, which is really interesting because why 6th grade? I honestly don't even know the answer. Like, I can't remember why it's always 6th grade. But does that mean they all die or they can't live normally anymore? Who knows? But they keep talking about this field mission. They'll probably bring it up in the future chapters, but yeah. This is the video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to keep making these videos. Tell me what